Hello everyone, welcome to this YouTube video. We are the founders of ROI First Analytics, and our mission is to make analytics and analytics services accessible to everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about how to use R to do some data analysis. And the problem that we're going to be solving is the same problem that we solved in the last couple videos using pivot tables in Excel and Google Sheets. So just a quick summary of that problem. We've identified a data set that had the information on different types of cars, VIN numbers, make and model, the year the cars were manufactured, etc. So let's see if we can pull that data set up again so I can show you what I'm talking about. So the way you would do that is, since you've done this on Google Drive, so go to the same option, Google Drive, and then you should see in the most recently worked Excel sheets. So this is basically the data set that we're talking about. So you have VIN numbers, county, city, state, postal code, model, make, etc. So and what we did with this data was we've tried to answer three questions, which were how many cars were sold in each state. And let me actually see if I can take notes of this one. So when we try to solve this problem using R, we'll know if we got the answer correctly or not. So the number of cars were 130,443. So let's just take a note of that. 30,443. And then 59,629 of them were Teslas. 59,629. My memory isn't that great, so and then the last one is 4,792 are Model X's. So let's actually take this and put it in a Google slide. If I can find that, there it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just open a presentation, Untitled 1, and then I'm going to just stick all of these stats in here so we can reference these as we try to solve this problem in R and Python. So if you haven't worked with R before, I'm going to walk you through really quickly how to download R and RStudio. And then what I'm going to do is, before we jump into the process itself, let's try to come up with a game plan on what are we trying to solve for and how are we going to do it. So the first one is install R and install RStudio. Then we're going to have to upload the dataset into R or RStudio so we can do the analysis. So upload the dataset into RStudio. Then what we want to do is by state. So if I go back to the Excel sheet here, by state, I want to count the number of VINs that I have in the dataset. So let's just take a note of that. Count the number of VINs by state. Then what I want to do is count the number of VINs that are only Teslas. And the last thing is count the number of VINs that are only Teslas and Model X. All right. So now that we have a game plan on how we want to tackle this problem, let's just jump into downloading R and RStudio. I already have them in my computer, but if you don't have them and if you want to download them, just type. You're going to have to do two things. You're going to have to first download R. So if you just say download R on Google, it should give you, I think the first link should work, and then just download the recommended version here, the most recent version. And then while that's running, let's also download RStudio. RStudio for desktop. So even here, as you can see, it recommends you install R first or RStudio. So you can either go through that path or you can just go to this link and then it should give you options to do both. So let's just click on this button. Looks like the download completed. And then So yes, okay, next. Just go through the steps. I'm going to say no here because I already have it, but if you hit yes, it should rewrite the file. So I'm going to cancel. Next thing is you'd want to download RStudio, so you can just click on this button, and then just give it a couple seconds. It should run pretty quickly. And let's try to open this. It should give you a pop-up pretty quickly. There it is. So you say yes and then follow the steps. I'm going to hit no again here because I already have this installed. So I'm going to hit cancel, but you do these two, you should have RStudio and it should look something like this. So let me open that up right now. This is what RStudio looks like. Let me just give you a quick lay of the land here. Whenever you import a dataset or create any objects, and we're going to talk about what those are in a second, they will start to show up right here. You can use this section to show graphs. This section basically shows you the queries that you're running, the R scripts that you're running, are they compiling correctly or not? Here, you can use this almost as a text editor to write code. So going back to our list of things that we need to do. All right, we've installed RStudio. Next, we need to upload the dataset into RStudio. So there are a couple ways to do it. I'm gonna show you the easy one right now. Right here, you see this option called import dataset. Click on this. Click on and go to where you have the CSV installed. Click on that option, hit open, and it should give you like a preview of how the dataset will look like. So it's going to do automatic encoding, and another way to see if the data is being separated accurately is you can see at the bottom, this is what the file looks like, and this is what it's doing with it. So it's basically recognizing that the commas are how the two columns are separated, which is great. The interesting thing that it's doing is you see this V1s and V2s and V3s. It's trying to give them a new column name. But if you click yes here, you're basically telling R that I actually have the column names in the dataset. So just take the first row and consider them as column names. And when you hit import, it should look like this. Great. And this looks a lot like this dataset, right? So you have VIN, county, city, state, postal code. City, state, postal code. Awesome. So now we have the dataset in R. So going back to our steps again, yes, we've uploaded the dataset into RStudio. The next thing is we want to count the number of VINs by state. To do that, what I'm going to do is let's go back to the query editor right here, and then let's just start writing some code. So one good thing about RStudio is whenever you use the user interface, it actually gives you the code that it's running at the bottom. So I'm going to copy, basically to import this dataset, it ran this block of code. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten the name of the data frame so it becomes easier for me to reference this again. So I'm going to actually clear my workspace so I'm not eating up into my memory. And then I'm going to hit run on this one. So let's do some quick checks. The good thing with this one is it actually gives you the number of rows and columns. So this data set has 130,443 rows and 17 columns, which is in line with what we saw in the Excel sheet. This is basically the CSV file. So 130,444 minus the column name, and then you have 17 columns in it, which is great. So going back to this one, let's just jump right in. So the first question that we want to ask is how many VINs do we have by state? So to do that, let's actually install a package called dplyr. So the way you would do that is you see this section right here, and you can click on packages, and then you can just type for the following one, which is called dplyr, and you click on this one, and then you hit install. I already have it in here, so what I'm going to just do is I'm going to just invoke the library. So I I can tell this worksheet or my R script right now that I'm going to be using some functions from this library to do this. So the first thing that I need to do is count the number of rows by state. So what we're going to do is let's look up the column names so we can start when we write some code, we're calling them accurately. So column names, you have, so let's just take a note of the columns you're going to be using. So you're going to be using VIN, you're going to be using make, because we'll know what type of car it is in this column. We're also going to be using the model of the car, which is this one, to get the information on model X versus not. And then we're going to be using state for all of these things. So if you want to rename any of these columns because they're too long and hard to type, so you can just, let's say for example you want to rename the column VIN, so you just use this function, call it whatever you want to call it, and then point it to the column you want to replace it with. So for example, if I want to call VIN dot 1.10 to VIN, this is the command that I would run. So let's just do that real quick, and then hit Control Enter, and that should run for you, and then perfect. And then if you want to check and see if that code actually worked, looks like it did. So it should show up in the very end of the data set. And then what we're going to do now is let's just jump into counting the number of rows by state. So the function that we're going to use, and I'm going to leave this in the description, is I'm going to create an object called group, and I'm going to save all the outputs that I get from this function into this one. So what I'm going to be asking the code to do is, in this data frame, I want you to group by state. And then I want you to summarize the following information. I want you to count the number of VIN numbers in this data set. So when you do that, it says you can't do this because it's character. I see. So because it's a VIN is a character, what we're going to do is we're going to actually count the number of rows in this data set. So let's, instead of doing this, let's actually do count. Instead of VIN, we're going to do N. If you do this, all right, so now you have this by state. So let's just check one of these. Washington was 130,000. 130,138. So that's great. So now if you want to do the next question, which is how many of these are Teslas, so let's just copy this one and then paste it over here. Let's also copy another one because we're also going to be doing Model X. Call it Tesla. Call it Model X. And then the only thing you need to do is you need to tell this function that I want to filter the data set by make. So you're going to add filter right here. I should give you the counts for Teslas. And then if you do the same thing for Tesla and Model X, so and hit enter. I see. So equal to, you have Model X. Let's see. For some reason I'm getting 0 rows, so maybe I'm calling it differently. So you see model space X, let's just copy this value and then paste it here. It gives you Model X. That's the end of the video. So thank you for watching, and on the next one we're going to do the same thing in Python.